Stallions. In this video, we're going to go over preterite versus imperfect and when to use which. But before we do that, let's just remind ourselves what each one is separately. Preterite is the most difficult. Use your preterite chart, right? It's the most common. So that's awful. If it was the most difficult and the least common, then life would be great. But this is bad because it's the most common and the most difficult. So most of the time in life, when you're talking about the past tense, you're going to be using preterite tense. And then here I go through and I remind you of the things that are on your preterite chart. Okay, no stem changing action, big thick coats of paint. There's no accents when there's thick coats of paint. Other than that, the normal suspects are UNL, UNL, UNL. And then we talk about the purple verbs, E to I, O to U in the sole, the sandal, the flip-flop verbs. Okay, so what I need you to know about preterite is I want you to think of it as precise. Preterite, precise. So if you're going to say something like, this morning I ate breakfast, that's very precise. You're telling me right when it happened. If you're going to say, as a kid, I used to eat breakfast early, that's not precise because it's just fuzzy, vague past as a kid. So that would be the imperfect. Okay, so preterite, precise. Okay, yesterday, 2 weeks ago, last summer is even precise enough. Even though last summer was 2 months long or 2.5 months long, it's over and done with. If something is over and done with and it's clearly there was a beginning and an end, like last summer or yesterday, then that's preterite. Okay, now imprecise, imperfect, imprecise, imperfect. So it's more fuzzy and vague. But it's been a while since you've even made imperfect tense, since you've even written it, since you've formulated it. So we have to remind ourselves of what that is. It's the aba or ia type endings. So the AR verbs become aba, trabajaba, trabajábamos, trabajaban. The ERIRs become ia, comía, corría, comíamos. Do not combine the two and create your own language. There is no iabamos. No. It's aba or abas, abam, aban, aba. Oh my gosh, abamos. Hard for me to say that. Abas. Or it's ia, ias, ian, iamos. Okay, so do not combine the two. And it's the less common. This is what we use when we're reminiscing about the past and talking about the past in a kind of reminiscing kind of way. Not very precise, just more vague, okay, in general. There's only 3 exceptions to this entire tense, unlike preterite, which has just a nightmare of exceptions. The 3 exceptions are ser, ir, and ver. Here they are for your memory. Era and era-like endings, iba and iba-like endings, veía and veía-like endings. Remembering that ia anything, ia everything has an accent. Okay, and then check out the éramos. Of course, íbamos, veíamos, trabajábamos, cantábamos, corríamos, kind of endings. No stem changing. Immediately chop off the ending, AR, ER, IR, glue on your new aba, ia ending. You don't have time to stem change and screw yourself up. Okay, so that's it in a quick nutshell. So normal conversation, we're back on the preterite side to talk about what you did yesterday, last week, etc. Look at my samples. Ayer hice mi tarea, anoche me acosté a las 9:30. Very precise, no doubt about it. It's over and done with. It's yesterday, it's last night, and it's over and done with. That's how we talk as humans most of the time. We talk about things we did, things we accomplished. What did you do yesterday? If you ask somebody what you did yesterday and what did you do, and they answer, they're going to be answering in all preterite, just like you asked the question in all preterite. The plot is the main actions of a story, so that's things that happened in a book or movie. And yeah, that's over and done with, right? The burglar escaped, done. The guy got caught, done. They got married, done deal, okay? Or an action repeated a specific number of times. Even if it was repetitive, this is where it gets a little confusing, but it's a specific number of times, a precise number, then that's still preterite. So la semana pasada caminé 3 millas 3 veces. It tells me how many times I did it. Even though I did it repeatedly last week, it tells me exactly how many times. So if you are going to say, as a kid, we moved around 3 different times between the ages of 0 and 10, that's preterite. Okay, if you want to say, as a kid, we moved around a lot, you actually would do imperfect there because it's a little vague, a little imprecise and vague. Okay, actions that occurred during or at a specific time, like last summer, we talked about that 2 months ago, last Christmas, on my 5th birthday, the first day of elementary school, on my graduation from high school, whatever. Those are all specific actions that occurred during a specific time or day. That's preterite. An action, now this is where it gets a little tricky. This is new stuff for you, okay, guys? The action that interrupted another action already taking place. So let's look right here. Mientras. Mientras is going to be a really key word for you. That's going to tip you off to the imperfect tense each time. Now, I realize I'm on the preterite side of the chart, and I've got imperfect going on, but look at the second half. I've got preterite. So stay with me. Mientras yo manejaba la escuela ayer, while I was driving to school yesterday, I saw preterite interrupter. El venado muerto al lado de la calle. I saw the dead deer on the side of the road. So here the first half is the ongoing, which is over here on the imperfect side. Same sentence, by the way, but now I bolded the imperfect, so you would really focus on the imperfect. Ongoing imperfect, ongoing imperfect. Can you memorize that? Ongoing imperfect. Ongoing imperfect. That's how you're going to know to use imperfect if there's an ongoing action. And then preterite interrupter, bang, boom, preterite interrupter. That's going to be that preterite interrupter. So there in the green bean, it's a green bean, V. Okay. And then I just give you a little reminder that many times in life, both preterite or imperfect can be used and both are correct. So don't stress too hard on this concept. It's okay to make mistakes and you can still be understood by the person you're talking to or writing to. And not a lot of judgment will be made on this. So there's a lot of wiggle room on this concept. I do not want you to think if I don't master this, then I won't be a good Spanish 3 student, or people will think of me as not very competent in the Spanish language. Not true, actually. Not true. There's a lot of wiggle room. I'll give you an example. If we were to get a group of native speakers in one room and I said, okay, can you explain this thought for me in Spanish? I want you to translate this idea. Okay, many situations, about half the people would do it in the preterite and half would do it in the imperfect, because it can be a matter of choice about 20% of the time. It can be the narrator's decision. It's kind of like a style thing, a stylistic approach, how you wish to interpret something that happened. If you're in a reminiscent, romantic kind of a mood, it might be imperfect. If you're more in that, like, just get the facts out, then that's preterite. So sometimes we say the same story, but we'll use an imperfect tone instead of a preterite. So that's what I'm saying, to not be too hard on yourself if this is hard for you, because it's hard for everyone. Okay, these key words are going to tip you off to preterite, though, 100% of the time on these first two. De repente and de pronto means suddenly. De repente and de pronto both mean suddenly. They're going to inherently indicate a preterite interrupter. Here I was walking on the street, imperfect, right? Imperfect. And suddenly a car passed by me at too fast of a speed. Okay, there's that preterite interrupter. Okay, one day I got lost at Disneyland. That's very precise. Yesterday, last night, day before yesterday, last Thursday, last weekend, last summer, very precise preterite. This morning, if now it's the evening and you're talking about what you did earlier that day, this morning I got up, I ate breakfast, I checked the computer, all that's preterite, preterite, preterite. Verbs that lend themselves to preterite. Empezar and comenzar are synonymous. They both mean to start. The verbs to start have inherently their emphasis on the moment of starting. That's precise preterite. If there is something that happened and it's done, it was a beginning and an end and it's done, it's wrapped up in a bow, over with, done with, then that's preterite. Okay, which is the way we talk most of the time as humans. Llegar, to arrive, you only arrive somewhere once, preterite. To terminar and acabar both mean to finish, to complete, to be done with something. Obviously, the emphasis is on being done. That is preterite in a nutshell. So those have to be preterite. And to decide, when you decide, that's always preterite. You may take a long time to make the decision and hem and haw and go back and forth in your head, but the moment you decide, it's preterite. So he decided to get married. He decided to go off to college. That's all preterite. The verb to decide is always in the preterite. Let's switch over to the imperfect side, please. Imperfect, we've already gone over what it's used, how you formulate it. This is a real easy one to grasp, okay, guys? So yay, let's start with a nice easy one. To tell time in the past. So look at these two sample sentences. This first one has imperfect right here. You can spot it right away, right? But then it has preterite over here. So the telling time portion of the sentence is the part that's the imperfect. The telling time in the past portion is the imperfect. It was 2:30 when it started to rain. So here's the imperfect, the telling time portion, and boom, it started to rain, preterite interrupter. It was 1 in the afternoon, telling time portion imperfect, when you called me, preterite interrupter. Okay, so the telling time portion is going to always be in the imperfect. Same with telling age in the past. When I was 7 years old, that portion has to be in the imperfect. Now, the second half of the sentence can be in preterite. Imperfect doesn't actually matter. It depends on what you're trying to say. Here I'm saying I learned how to ride a bike. When I was 7, I learned how to ride a bike. Now, maybe it took me a couple of weeks to learn, a couple hours to learn, a couple afternoons in a row, a couple months even. But I finally did learn. That moment I switched from being a non-bike rider to a bike rider, I learned it. That's preterite, okay? So aprender would be a great one to put that it's used in the preterite. But let me show you how we could use aprender too, though, in the imperfect. When I was 7, I used to learn new things all the time. Now, see, that's an example of using aprender, but in the imperfect. Cuando yo tenía 7 años, yo aprendía muchas cosas nuevas, casi siempre. I was always learning new things. So that's going to be 100% imperfect because it's ongoing. For that whole year I was 7. I was always learning new things, constantly, ongoing. Okay, to describe scenery, weather, what people were wearing or look like. So description is in the imperfect. It was very good weather in Hawaii when we arrived there. So it was very good weather portion is the description portion of the weather. That's the imperfect portion. When we arrive, boom, preterite interrupter, right? Okay. Now let's talk about weather for one more second. If you wanted to say yesterday it rained for 2 hours, that is describing weather, but it's doing it in a preterite kind of way. It's using the action verb rained. It rained for 2 hours. So I would say use preterite. Ayer llovió por 2 horas. Ayer llovió. So I'm not here to tell you that all weather is imperfect. I wish it was that easy. That's not it. But to describe the weather, it was hot, it was cold, it was windy, it was sunny, it was warm, it was cool. Those are all description. Now, if you do the verb, it rained, it snowed, it hailed, then those are actions that take preterite instead, unless you say, when I was a little girl, it rained a lot, it seemed like. Now, that's imperfect because it's very fuzzy and ongoing. When I was a little girl, it always seemed like it was raining. It rained a lot. That's very different than it rained last week, 3 days in a row. That would be preterite. Okay, habitual actions in the past, reminiscing about the past. This is the part we did before Christmas when we talked about used to or would. Growing up, we used to go to the beach and we would take the last bus home and we would stop for ice cream. We used to stop for ice cream. All that's reminiscing about your past, fuzzy past, ongoing, fuzzy past, habitual actions that we used to do back in the good old days. That's always imperfect. To start a story, the whole once upon a time phrase, once upon a time there was phrase, había una vez, that's how we say once upon a time there was. And in Spanish, it's 3 words. Once upon a time there was. 3 words. English, it's once upon a time there was. And so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6, it's double the length. Now here's where you put a girl, a dragon, a lion, a boy that lived, whatever. But the había una vez is once upon a time there was. Once upon a time there was. That's how we start a fairy tale story. That's always the imperfect. And then this is the counterpart to what we were already talking about. This is the ongoing portion. While I was driving to school, or when I was driving to school, I saw. Okay, so let's go ahead into the key words. So to be honest with you, this mientras should probably be the first keyword. I don't know why it's not there. But let's go ahead and add it, stallions. Mientras, while, cuando, when. Those are great keywords for imperfect. Can you add them for me? Mientras, while, and cuando, when. Okay, so those are going to be the ongoing. When I was doing this, somebody came to the door. So when I was doing this, cuando yo lo hacía, imperfect, somebody came to the door. Alguien llegó a la puerta or tocó la puerta. Preterite interrupter. Okay, siempre, always, a menudo, often, a veces, sometimes, de vez en cuando, once in a while, many times, Sundays, weekends. These are all inherently going to talk about things that happen week in, week out, or many times, habitual actions, imperfect. As a child, generally speaking, regularly speaking, in general, all of these they all mean the same. They're all synonymous. Generalmente, por lo regular, en general, all mean generally speaking. La mayor parte del tiempo, most of the time, that's kind of like the same thing. Usually, hey, kind of like the same thing. Now, the ya no, let's talk about ya no. Ya no, I love it. I love ya no. Ya no means no longer. That's going to tip you off to imperfect, okay? So let me give you an example. Cuando yo tenía 3 años, ya no usaba mi cobija. When I was 3, I no longer used my blanket, my little security blanket. Cuando yo tenía 3 años, ya no usaba mi cobija. Okay, when I was in high school, I no longer, spent time with those people. Cuando yo estaba en la escuela secundaria, ya no pasaba tiempo con ellos. So ya no longer. It's going to mean no longer, and it's going to tip you off to imperfect. Now let's compare and contrast that to plain old ya. Ya by itself means already. It can mean now. It can mean hurry up. It can mean a lot of things. Mean now and already is the most common. So let's not confuse ya no with ya. Ya no means no longer. Okay, gracias, estudiantes.